wheel weaves and a new episode comes to pass. Episode 7 of Amazon's adaptation of The Wheel of Time, titled The Dark Along the Ways, hits hard in a number of categories. Physically, we are punched in the face right out of the bat with this amazing fight sequence, followed by this kind of horror movie inspired fight or flight thing within the ways, and then we get a series of emotional sequences as our characters deal with the departure of Matt, and how each of them reacts to it. And then the episode proceeds to break through a bunch of other emotional walls, and grow the characters' relationships with each other, albeit through methods that I don't necessarily enjoy. I think there's a scene in there that a lot of people might react to, but they all end up being much closer together at the end of the episode than they were at the start of the episode. And then they kind of rip all that down, and they reveal to us that Rand al'Thor is, in fact, the Dragon Reborn. I know I have some new people that only watch the show and haven't read the books, so please let me know what your thoughts on this. Who you thought it was going to be. Did it change over time as episodes went on? And ultimately, how do you feel about it being Rand? Do you feel like you missed something? Or do you feel like, they didn't really lead you to suspect that? Or was it pretty obvious the whole time? Let me know in the comments below. Starting right off the bat, number 1, Blood Snow. I think this might be my favorite cold open in the show so far, hands down. From the way it opens up, we are giving this cold, harsh environment on the slopes of Dragonmount that we saw in 2 episodes ago. There's this total sense of chaos mixed in with this on-screen character. She seems to be alone and kind of helpless, but just kidding. She is in no way helpless. I believe she is Far Dara's Mai, a maiden of the spear. She can take care of herself, as we see. I could go word for word through this sequence, but we all watched it. We know what happens. It was glorious. We get this sick shot of this maiden who shall remain unnamed for now, because, spoilers, she's basically birthing her child, or in the latest stage of childbirth. I actually don't know much about that, so pardon my getting that wrong if it is. But anyways, she's ducking, leaping. She pulls this dude to the ground and then just pile drives a spear through his head. That was pretty intense. And then she immediately, after she just starts taking these dudes one-on-one, I think the flow of this sequence between like each piece of combat worked very well. It almost looked like a dance, like she was dancing with her spears. We'll get into that eventually. Basically, the Aiel, they dance the spears. That's their way of saying they're fighting. So I thought that was a nice way to show Aiel fighting. I like these combat sequences. It seemed to take into account that there's other soldiers present. It wasn't kind of a sequence of 1v1 fights while 2 other people stand around. Each encounter flowed into the next one. At one point, she uses the body of a soldier to block a throwing knife from an incoming dude, and then in like the same motion, she's pulling back the spear and just launches it through this dude. I can't tell for sure, but it looks like they probably recorded the movements and then sped them up to look a little more fluid on screen, which is probably what they'll have to do with a lot of the fights in this series. We get to the point where the swordsmen are almost supernatural with their abilities and movement speeds. So in order to capture all of the movements they perform in a short amount of time, this might be a safe route to go. This looks really good. So if that is what they did, and then they apply that to future fight scenes, I am going to be blown away by this. The choreography is insane. But unfortunately, the process of wiping out all these soldiers, our maiden takes a dagger to the side. This combined with the possible complications of giving birth on the side of a cold mountain with no medical help whatsoever, great odds she is not going to make it. You can kind of even tell when she gets stabbed in the side, there's a slow motion on her face where she's basically like, crap. Anyway, she crawls over, lays down to get birth, only to be staring up at a very familiar looking blade. Quick sidebar, I totally understand why they went with the heron on the blade now as far as visible purposes. If if it was on the hilt, we probably would have never seen it during a lot of scenes, specifically this one, the way they did the reveal. So I understand that, and yeah, I get why they did it. Another point of discussion would be the costume design in this situation. From what I imagined the Aiel looked like, this was very well done. It looks pretty spot on to me, what I imagined in the shows. I've seen some comic clip arts from the graphic novels and stuff, and just fan art before, and these look very good. So did the Illianer. The soldiers looked really good too. So all in all, the costume design for this fight scene was really good. Didn't seem cheap or chintzy, but that's just to me, a regular viewer. I'm not well versed in armor. I don't think most viewers are. Maybe if you're an armor person, this didn't do it for you, but for the average idiot like me, I thought they looked great. But anyways, this opener had everything for me. Had a cool location, a badass fight scene. There was an appropriate amount of gore for a fight scene. It wasn't disgusting, but like when a dude gets stabbed in the chest, there's a bit of, it's going to be a little violent and graphic. Great costume design, great choreography, awesome cinematography. And we get to see this beloved culture to the fandom on scene in full display for the first time, kind of in action. And then we also see this huge plot event for the series come to life. This is one of the big first plot events that we get to see. So I really don't know what more I could want from it. This was an awesome scene, and I'm looking forward to more action sequences like this as the series goes on. Number 2, The Dragon Reborn. We finally have it. The big reveal. Surprise, surprise. Rafe didn't change it. Wow, shocker. I was wondering how they were going to reveal it and whether or not it was going to be in the best way. It certainly felt good to watch it. The emotional high we're on after Rand and Egwene seem to come to terms with each other. Nynaeve and Lan have their moment. The group is kind of makes up with each other. And then out of nowhere, we understand why they have been dialing up Rand's reactions a little more this episode. He's more distraught after some of the stuff happens. He gets more camera time on his facial expressions after each big moment happens. Guess we know why now. And then we kind of get this montage of the journey so far, combined with scenes from him taking Tam back to the village after the Trolloc attack. Rand fights this information throughout the first season. There's a scene where in the library, Loial keeps saying he's an Aielman, and Rand is getting visibly upset about it. Now we know why he was so upset. Tom in the third episode is saying, you won't see red hair like that on this side of the spine of the world. When they have that Aiel that's dead in the cage, and they pan to red hair. We know, basically he's told that Tam isn't his real father. He's finding out his whole life is a little bit of a lie. So obviously he's very upset. He's born on the slopes of Dragonmount to this Aiel maiden, and he can channel. Rand al'Thor is the Dragon Reborn. He goes to Min to try and kind of confirm it for sure, but deep in his heart, he already knows. They have this foreshadow-riddled conversation. She tells Rand about seeing Tam and Tar Valon, the visions around him. Very vivid visions for what I'm used to Min having, so it's kind of a neat little story. Just some more background on the whole process of Tam coming into care of Rand, or the other way around. That's something that has always kind of been up in air for the series. So it was interesting to read that and get a little backstory that we didn't have before. I'm not really going to get into that too much more because there's even more spoilers for the series that kind of go around his conversation with Min. So we will just nod and say that there was a lot there that we will revisit someday. Number 3, Lan and Nynaeve. What can I say? Lan and Nynaeve knocked boots. I knew they were going to amp up their relationship in the series, but I didn't think we would get this, especially in season 1. I'm on board with their enhanced relationship and actually being shown on screen. I think that's a valid criticism of the book series, that these two seem to kick it off out of nowhere. To me, I was just surprised that Nynaeve would be down to get all hot and sweaty already. We kind of have these small town village people that are very much the wait till marriage kind of type. But considering we have Rand and Egwene already before they're married getting it on, I guess I shouldn't be shocked that Nynaeve would want to do the same. I think that's just a general change in the show compared to the books, which is fine. And then kind of we get introduced to we get you introduced to Shinar and the Shinarans. And then that also gets us introduced to this other side of Lan that we haven't seen before. Having his alternate title of Daishan revealed to us. I probably pronounced that wrong, but it is what it is. I thought the way they went about giving the backstory of Malkir and Lan's escape had a nice touch to it. And I'm wondering if we'll get a glimpse of the Seven Towers in the next episode, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that. Throwing all of this together for both characters, we have an interesting dynamic of emotion and motivation. I'm looking forward to it playing out. On one hand, you have Lan the Warder, committed to his Aes Sedai and her cause, throwing his life as a prince and his fallen people kind of behind him. On the other hand, you have Nynaeve, the stubborn wisdom, who wants nothing more than to protect her people from the very Aes Sedai that this guy she's in love with is bound to. Slap them together and you're going to get some A1 story arc material, and looking forward to that going on and seeing how they play out some of the book events. Number 4, Min. A new character is introduced, and this one has a special talent. Min, who appears to be a bartender of sorts in Fal Dara, has the ability that few know about, where she can see glimpses of the pattern, which is kind of essentially seeing the future. Moraine is hoping to use her to identify which one of the kids is the Dragon Reborn. However, they are not successful. Moraine's kind of a dick to her, but eventually we get these readings, and I really can't get into the meaning of each of them without shoving spoilers directly down your throat, but they each mean something. Rand holding a baby, that threw me off a bit. I'm pretty interested in what that's gonna mean. I know it might seem like they should just use this to solve all the world's problems. If she can truly see the future and know all these things, then they can take that information and do as they may. But there's catastrophic possibilities that we see in basically any movie when it comes to future telling. RJ kind of touches on some of this in the books, but it's way later on than we'll see for a while in the show. But just know that it gets touched on why they wouldn't just have Min tell them everything. Then she says that the Amaryllis seat will be her downfall, and based on book events, I'm curious how that will play out. These viewings can be interpreted pretty loosely, so it could be a big change, or it could be the way things are, and then it's just a tie-in that might be a bit of a stretch. We'll have to wait and see how it pans out. Anyways, I'm also a fan of the casting choice. I'm interested to see her actually perform a little bit more and have more character interactions. Min is definitely, because of her abilities, provides a lot of interesting stuff as we move on. So we shall see how that pans out. And I'm really looking forward to hearing her call certain people woolheads. Number 5, Fal Dara. I really like the design they chose for Fal Dara. It looks like a real fort you'd see in real life in history, with the pointed sides. It's got these massive walls. The scaling's a lot bigger than I first thought. The outer walls look like they're at least like 100 feet tall, and the whole structure looks like it's hundreds of feet tall. There's tons of banners everywhere on the fortress. There's even a good amount of those hawk statues, or they crow statues. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I know that's a big detail. My bad. As far as it looks, I was very impressed and pleased. The interior is also very fortress-like. The hallways are lined with torches. There's a lot of brick and masonry work. It's a lot less polished than what we see in the White Tower. It's much more kind of it's a fortress than a residential high hoity-toity place in the middle of the world. Little bit of a change up as far as the location goes. It appears that Tarwin's Gap is right across this open plain from the city. Now, I never thought of this area as the desert biome that we get in this scene. I always thought of it as kind of like a northern plain. If you've played Skyrim, kind of like the area around Whiterun, I'm sure Jordan has described it vividly, and maybe it is supposed to be that kind of desert thing. So that's on me if I got it wrong. I really like the Shinar and costume designs that we got introduced to as well, especially this kind of crow thing that Lord Agilmar is wearing around him. I thought that was pretty cool, as well as the soldiers that escort them into those chambers. All in all, really good costume design, cool set. Interested in the location changes, if those were actual kind of biome changes. We'll see how that plays out in the future. Number 6, the blight. Continuing with environmental things, the blight isn't necessarily what I thought it would look like. It's kind of this weird viney looking growth in the show, and I guess I always thought of it as more of like a tropical kind of location. Not necessarily like a rainforest, but more of like a tropical beach area with some spacing between the plants, room to walk around. You can still move about freely, see a little bit farther, but then there's still like these trees and bushes and stuff that can like fuck you up. For book readers, you know what I'm talking about. Not sure how I feel about this approach, but I guess it'll make it easier for them to kind of show the blight advancing over time if they go that route. I'm not necessarily sold on it. I don't think I like the vininess. Is what it is. I'm not sure how you guys feel about it. Let me know. Number 7, weird love triangle thing they tried to get going. We get this accusation of Perrin being in love with Egwene from Nynaeve, and at first I was taken aback and kind of frustrated by it. But as the scene progressed, I was hoping more and more that they would lean into it just being kind of accusations where people got things wrong, and then none of it being true. But after watching again and hearing the Black Wind and Perrin's kind of internal dialogue, I'm not so sure. I'm really hoping this was just a one-time piece used to create drama, which even still might not necessarily be something I'm okay with. I've always enjoyed Perrin and Egwene's platonic friendship, so if they kind of change that or try to monkey with it, I'm not sure how that would make me feel. I always enjoyed the fact that not every male and female that spend time together need to fall in love. So, long story short, if we could just not do that, and this was just a kind of one-off thing, maybe driven by losing Barney in the casting, so they came up with some filler. Let's just not do the love triangle, please, and thank you. Moving on. Number 8, Padan Fain. Back again in this episode is our mysterious peddler, who has become a mix of the horror villain and this kind of Leonardo DiCaprio skipping down the street all happy-go-lucky. As I said in my episode 5 video, the whistle he makes is going to be iconic. I'm calling it now. I really hope they stick with it and lean into it. Even when he steps out of the way gate, there's music playing, and it seems like it's trying to mimic that whistle. So that's a neat little touch that I hope they stick with throughout the series. When he appeared out of thin air in the ways and was seemingly unfazed by the Black Wind, that was some real spooky movie type shit. And then he's just, like I said, he's just happy-go-lucky walking out of there like nothing happened. Like none of that even affected him or fazed him. So we have this super scary entity that they're all freaking out of, and this dude just walks out like nothing. So there's a lot to unpack there that I won't until I think the show is ready for us to unpack it. There's just a lot of potential with this character, and I'm really looking forward to them kind of feeding in book stuff and hopefully stuff they add in to make everything make more sense. I don't know how only Perrin saw him walking in the street, because the dude just walked by them in broad daylight and didn't try to hide his face at all. That is what it is. So I also saw on Twitter there was like this still of him holding a leaf, what looks like a metal leaf. So I'm assuming this is the like an Avendosora leaf if I pronounce that right, which is essentially like an access key to the way gates. This makes me believe they're still going to allow non-channelers to access the ways, but they'll need that key in order to get in there, which is in the books. I'm glad that was cleared up, but I wish it didn't need to come across a Twitter thread to know about that. But that's another complaint for another day where I could go on and on and on. So we will move on to our next topic. Number 9, the ways in the Black Wind. So we get our first look into the actual ways in this episode. The walkways look a little different than I imagined, but as we kind of pan out, we can see how they're like literally floating walkways going in every direction, seemingly floating in midair. It's definitely a good representation of the mystery that is the ways. It might not be an exact replica of what I thought of in my head, but it's still a decent representation. We even get some backstory about it from Loyal. Some more good dialogue of him going on and on about the dangers, and Rand is basically like, nah, dude, we get it. Like, it's super scary. You don't need to keep telling us about all the awful things that happened. And then another thing, I rewatched it with subtitles, and I totally missed the joke where Loyal asks for their patience, and Rand is like, if he's asking for patience, we're going to die. That's some good stuff. Keep those coming, but also I wish I didn't need to have subtitles on to hear that type of stuff. It seems like I missed a lot. Because there's at one point Rand is asking Perrin how he saw the stone in the dark, because it's very dark in there, and somehow Perrin sees this thing up ahead. So that's a little suspicious on Perrin's part. I wonder if we'll ever find out what that's about. Then we kind of hear that familiar whistling that I've been raving about, and then a Trolloc jumps out, which kicks off a series of events. First, it gives us the thought that Trollocs can be using the ways, and this is likely how they reach the two rivers undetected by any of the Aes Sedai in the world, anybody else in the world, which means they can probably also go more places. Secondly, we have spooky Padan Fain being spooky. This kind of horror element when the lightning strikes and he's just standing there out of nowhere. That's terrifying. Third, we have someone channel to block the Trolloc, and we kind of get our introduction to Machin Shin, Machin Shin, the Black Wind, which is kind of different than I imagined it in the books. I always thought of the voice more as like a creepy, soft, smooth one, like the basilisk voice in the Chamber of Secrets. And then this time we have it speaking kind of directly into people's heads. I can see why they did this, because it allows them to add inner dialogue to see what's eating at our characters' thoughts, and can kind of get us in their heads without, like a book would, but we don't get that opportunity because this is a TV show, not a book. I know that's some groundbreaking stuff. Then we get Nynaeve channeling to hold off the scary voices. Moraine opens the gate, and our whole party steps out into Fal Dara, and they're just obviously shaken up by what they just heard. As you can see, Rand is a little extra upset, and we find out why later in the episode, but in this video order, we already talked about him being the Dragon Reborn, so you get that big old tear down his face because he knows... he knows. Number 10, Matt Cawthon. What can I say about this? I think I'm willing to give a pass on some of the inconsistencies this is going to create for this season, because I understand the difficulties that they've faced. However, with the time gap for season 2 and the importance of Matt's character going forward, they're going to have to figure out a way to tie things back together. And I think there are plenty of ways to do this, and the ways that it could be done to fit the world and Matt's current motivations. Moraine keeps mentioning this darkness inside him that has apparently existed since before Shadar Logoth, and without getting into too much detail, I'm wondering if this is a character trait we see in Matt that isn't very camera friendly, being modified to make more sense to visual media. Or maybe it's just some weird added piece to help justify their current direction with his character or with losing Barney. I don't really know, but I just hope that they know, and they seem to be doing a good job moving forward with certain things. And guys, just Just don't screw it up, please. All right, so I'm gonna get into some honorable mentions for the show, things that I just kind of wanted to touch on really quickly. The characters' responses to Matt leaving. There's this awkward tension in the scene due to Matt staying behind, and I'm not really sure how to feel about this one. On one hand, it feels very awkward and seems to bring characters to say things they probably wouldn't actually say in the books, to justify the party moving forward and kind of forgetting what just happened. On the other hand, I recognize the issue that the writing team faced with Barney not returning to set. I'm not going to dwell on it too hard, but I'm definitely looking forward to season 2 and leaving all that awkwardness behind us. We get the concept of women being trained in the tower but not becoming full Aes Sedai because maybe they weren't powerful enough, with Lady Amelisa. This is kind of a good explanation that we're going to see in the future because we are not done meeting kind of rulers that trained in the tower. We will run into more in the future. Very important one, so hopefully then we won't have to go back through the process of explaining this. So we shall see. Sorry, I was just trying to talk over some freaking trucks and shit driving by. It's nonstop all day. There's also this scene where Moraine, on the night after everything happens, she's sitting on her balcony and she's talking to Lan, and she seems like she can sense something, and I'm wondering if this is her sensing a certain dark presence in Fal Dara that she would have felt before. She calls it nostalgia. I really can't get into that because of spoilers, but I'm thinking that might be what it was. We finally get more of our Two Rivers people actually talking to each other. The bond between these characters have felt relatively bland so far, and so I cherish any time they are on screen together. We get Rand and Egwene seeming to come to terms with each other, which was incredibly touching, and I'm looking forward to the spoiler-free development of their relationship. There's a lot to unpack there, and interested to see how they're going to go forward with it. Another thing would be, what happens to Loyal after they get to Fal Dara? They just kind of say, "Suh!" He doesn't talk again the whole episode. So, yeah. Bye, Loyal. See you later, Tater. All right, so for my conclusion and rating, I'm having trouble drawing a conclusion on this episode. On one hand, it had my favorite action sequence of the season so far. It had the Dragon Reborn reveal, which I thought was well done, and it had a great sequence within the ways. It also developed Nynaeve and Lan's relationship and brought Rand and Egwene closer together. On the other hand, we have Loyal disappearing after they got to Fal Dara, this weird love triangle plot piece that I'm just not a fan of, and the departure of Matt, which I really don't want to fault them too much for, as it was unexpected, and I'm sure it threw a grenade in their whole operation. I would say I rate it a 6. The last episode I rated a 7, and I definitely should have rated that one a 6 as well. Ultimately, looking back, 6 is where I land on this one. 6 out of 10 is still a good episode, and I think I may have skewed my previous ratings. So going forward, I'm going to try and use 5 being a good episode. 6 will be a good episode with maybe 1 or 2 cool things happening. 7 and 8 will be great. 9 is near perfect, and 10 is obviously a masterpiece. There's a lot of show coming our way, so I want to make sure I have room to really get the whole spectrum in the future. So a 6, it stays for being a good episode with some great action sequences and a big reveal. And then there was still some minor ones that set a lot of balls in motion. Anyways, with that being said, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there something I missed that you picked up? Did you get the Dragon Reborn right? Are you a show-only watcher that somehow didn't have it spoiled for you already? Is this who you thought it was going to be? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys for the finale next week. Peace.